I am on a mission to replace my A6300, which I'm using right now. Don't get me wrong, for hobbyists it's really good, but I'm technically a professional. I use a camera to do my job and it's not ideal. I'm not going to run through all the problems I have with this because I listed all of those in my Fuji X-T4 review, so I recommend you check that out if you need to know that for some reason. But I asked Panasonic Lumix in particular if they'd send over their S5, and they did with the 24-105 f4 optically stabilized lens, and today we're going to have a look at it and see if it's worth me going to that from the A6300. Like the Fuji X-T4 review, I'm going to do this in a things I like and things I don't like kind of style, and instead of starting with the negatives, I'm going to actually start with the positives this time around. The first thing that stood out for me is that the ergonomics, they're really good. Now, I have kind of medium-sized hands, so I should be about average in terms of what everyone else can feel with their hands, but I found the grip to be nice and big, the dials to be really clicky and tactile and in the right place, found all the buttons to be in the right place, and overall it felt like a much more steady, grippy camera in the hand versus the A6300, which is definitely on the smaller side. Now, some of you might prefer a bigger camera or a smaller camera, but for me personally, I really like the way everything was laid out. The joystick is really handy for selecting focus and going through menus, the dials were all in the right place, and yeah, overall, I found the ergonomics to be one of the better parts of the S5. I've actually had a Panasonic before, it was the Lumix GH4, and so I found the menu system to be really intuitive and much better than what I have on the Sony. The flippy screen is really good, I think every camera should have one. It's definitely not the thing that I'm going to use all the time, like if I had one of these, even if I had a flippy screen on my camera, I'd definitely use something like a monitor above, just to make sure that I get a better critical focus, because the small screen isn't going to be the best if you're, say, a couple of meters away from the camera. The video performance and photo performance from the S5 was stunning, it was brilliant, it was all you need for YouTube. There's Vlog built in, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and something that's really awesome is that you can then output ProRes RAW to an Atomos Ninja 5. Now, I did this with my Z-Cam for the very short amount of time that I had that, and it worked really well, and ProRes RAW is a really nice codec to use. As for the menu performance and otherwise performance, boot up times, everything like that, it seemed to work really well, much better than my Sony, which is a little dated at this point. The image was sharp, the slow motion options were great, of course the IBIS is some of the best stuff. Panasonic IBIS is probably the best IBIS you can get, and getting like those shots that almost look like they've been locked off on a tripod, especially in slow motion as well if you slow it all down, it's just something that you cannot replicate with such a Sony 6300 that doesn't have IBIS at all and that looks pretty jittery unless you have a really steady hand or if you use something like a gimbal. Now onto things that I didn't like about the camera. I found that the L mount is it's something like I would have to adapt to if I bought an S5, because the L mount lenses are mostly focus by wire, which is something that I don't like, although I will say that they did feel a lot better than the Fuji lenses that I used with focus by wire. The L mount system isn't quite as nice as something like a Sony or something like an EF mount. I also didn't like the fact that it used micro HDMI. I mean, the camera is large, it should be able to use a full-size HDMI like the Lumix GH5, but the S5 doesn't, which for me is annoying coming from someone who's actually broken a lot of micro HDMI cables, a micro HDMI port as well. It is nice to have a full-size HDMI. On the S5, a camera that is much larger than the A6300 doesn't have it, and it's kind of annoying. But other than that, it's really hard to complain about the Lumix S5. So, will I be going out and buying one? Well, probably, again, is something that maybe I should have really thought about it before making this video, but over the past couple of months I've thought about it, and I think it's probably in my top list. The Fuji was high up on the list. It just trumps it. It's got better video performance, better photo performance, in my opinion. Maybe it's just the way I like my video and photos, but I just think it looks a lot better. The IBIS is actually better. The battery life is better. It's a little bit cheaper depending on where you buy it, and it being full frame, it actually does have better low light performance as well. I just need to try out one more camera, and then I think I will have made up my mind. That, of course, is the Sony a7 III, because I am a Sony user, and maybe staying in the system would be a good thing. But for now, I want to thank Panasonic Lumix for sending me the S5 and the lens, because I think it performed really well. I actually used the Lumix S5 for a few videos on Android Authority, namely the what to expect from smartphones next year, the smartphone deals, our favourite smartphones, and is Xiaomi the new Huawei? And to be honest, I found that The video performance in those was pretty good, although I didn't have a long time to really try out the different modes just to make sure that everything was like how I wanted it. But between the quick menu and the full menu, I kind of got a grasp of it pretty quickly within a week. Is it a good camera? It's a fantastic camera, and I urge that you look at it, try and rent one, or at least try and borrow one to see what it's like before buying, because I'll be honest, it's probably my top 2 cameras right now. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I promise this is the last camera video for a long time. Please do like, dislike, comment and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. I want to give a massive shout out to all my patrons because they've been brilliant for continually supporting me. Please do check out all my social medias in the video description. I've been Ryan Thomas and I'll catch you later. Peace.